So you want to walk away from everything and live life on the open road. Or maybe you're being priced out of your sticks and bricks and living on the road is kind of the only option. Or maybe you just want to hold down the fort at home, but you want to head out for a grand adventure of living on the road for a little while. In this video, I'm going to share with you some real numbers and methods for calculating what this might cost you to achieve. And let me tell you, the numbers are surprising.
Hi, I'm Christine. After starting life over in 2020, I'm using seasonal work to build financial security, experience new places, and most importantly, keep living life as a big adventure. Come along as I live like a local in desired destinations, spend time in nature hiking, backpacking, and living out of my car, and craft the trips of my dreams on a backpacker's budget.
Let's start with a breakdown of expense categories. We have bills, variable expenses, and long-term expenses. And since this may need to be said, I am just a girl living in her SUV. I am speaking from my own experience, and I am not a financial advisor. So this is for entertainment purposes. Personally, my bills fall into the following categories, totaling to $420 per month. My categories are communication, entertainment subscriptions, gym membership, business expenses, car insurance. I have no debt, and I also have no health care. I know, some of you are going to lose your minds. I'll provide a breakdown of my expenses for you to see, but the big one to note is $148 a month of my expenses are attributed to business. My business? Well, it's being here on YouTube. So this is what it costs me to produce content on a regular basis each month. Part of my cell phone bill is also attributed to this business expense because prior to being on YouTube more frequently, I was able to get by just fine with a $50 prepaid plan and an older cell phone. Well, I upgraded my cell phone and I upgraded my plan to support the needs of my business, and so part of that is applied to my business expenses. So you can see that if I subtract that out of my budget, I can live for under $300 a month with my bills. There is one bill that you're going to see applied monthly, which is my car insurance, and I took $130 away monthly, but I do pay that biannually. There are also some other bills that are annual expenses that I save for each month, and those total to about $35 each month where I just tuck the money away. Some of those expenses are annual subscriptions, like the Dirt or All Trails, and then some of those other things are vehicle registration as well as a mailbox that I pay for in South Dakota where I am a state resident. My way of accounting for these expenses each month is that I can account for them as I'm getting paid instead of taking a big hit a couple times a year for something that I know is coming up but I didn't plan for properly. Okay, so the fact of the matter is you can get by on pretty little while living in a vehicle, but we still haven't covered all of the basic necessities. So up next, we're going to talk about variable expenses. Variable expenses for me are broken down into the following category: gas, groceries, dining out, activities, hygiene and beauty, spending, and accommodation. Everybody's going to have different bills and they're going to have different variable expense categories. This is just how I sort of account for the things that come up on the day-to-day or more commonly weekly basis that I end up spending money on. So these are the categories that I've assigned to that. The amount of money I spend on each of these categories can vary widely, especially if left unmanaged. That's why having a budget is so important. For many people living on the road, their biggest variable expense is going to be gas or fuel. And that can depend on the frequency and distance one travels. If you're looking to be as frugal and budget friendly as possible, then obviously staying in one place is the way to go. But for many people, moving into their vehicle and living on the road is all about exploring the country and continent in which they are stationed, and they want to move around to explore different areas. I know that is definitely the case for me. So based on the research I've done from talking to a handful of people and looking up some other YouTube content, I'd say A good bare minimum number for living this lifestyle on the road is about $1,500 a month, and I find that to be the case for myself as well. However, that still requires you to be very frugal. We're not out here living the good life on $1,500 a month, although we are living a good life on $1,500 a month. So let me break that down for you in just a second, but first let's talk a little bit more about traveling and the cost of fuel. If you're hitting the road with a specific route in mind, then I would suggest using a tool maybe as simple as Google Maps or something online that's free like Gas Buddy, or using the dirt road maps to actually plan out your route, and from that take a look at local gas prices in the region that you'll be traveling through, or sometimes it's multiple regions, because this can vary widely. Then, knowing the miles per gallon of your particular vehicle, you're going to calculate as best as you can how much the gas is going to cost you. This is a little bit complicated, but generally pretty easy to do, and it actually, for me, has been very true and very effective. The first time I ever really did this was when I traveled from Salt Lake City, Utah area up to Seward, Alaska, and I calculated all of the costs all through the northern part of the contiguous US, through southern Canada, through the Yukon territories, and up into Alaska, and really did hit the number pretty closely on the head of the nail there. So I do find that planning those out in advance is worth your while to get to know what it is that you're biting off when you're saying you want to head from one spot to another. One way to be able to move from one place to another, but also keep your budget a little bit more manageable, is to slow down, which is what I've been doing in my recent travels, is definitely spending more time in each region to stretch the budget. As someone who recently moved to content creation as my full-time income source, I'm facing variable income in a way that's new to me. In the past, when I came out and hit the road, I always had a chunk of money that I had set aside to just sort of spend through until I got to my next work contract and I started earning money from an outside employer again. But for now, those days are over for me, and I hope for them to be over for a long time. So that means I'm keeping an eye and managing my budget. So let's look at some variable expenses and what one can do to manage those expenses in a budget that we can make a $1,500 monthly budget work. All right, we're working within a budget of variable expenses getting $30 per day, which equals to about $925 per month. Now, it doesn't really do me a lot of good to think about how much money per day I'm allowed to spend, because I just can't think of it like that. When I go to the fuel pump or when I go to the grocery store, it's like, what does this number mean to me? It means I can spend $10 in groceries today, but I'm trying to feed myself for a week. So I've taken those numbers and done a little funky math and made them nice, clean, round numbers per week, because it's not really realistic that you're going to hit each number exactly every single day, every single month. But over the course of a year, hopefully you can kind of keep the numbers manageable. So we're looking at gas. I have applied $80 a week for spending in gas. My vehicle is getting roughly 25 miles per gallon, and with a gas price estimate of about $3.50, I have to put premium in my vehicle. We're looking at about 2,100 miles that I can travel each month and stay within my budget for gas. With groceries, it's about $200 a month, which breaks down to about $50 a week spending in groceries. This number is probably where I struggle the most. I just really have trouble keeping budgets in line when it comes to groceries, and I can easily let it get away with me. So this is something that I have to spend more time planning for, focusing on, and honestly just staying more disciplined about in order to hit my $200 a month number for groceries. Dining out might seem a little bit high with me allowing for $160 a month, which is $40 a week, but there are a couple of specific reasons why. At $160 a month with a $1,500 budget, it seems like, wow, you could really cut that back and save a big percentage of your budget. But for dining out, I do spend time at restaurants, specifically more cafes or more casual dining, where I can plug in my laptop and work for hours undisturbed. I look for locations that I won't bother them and they don't really bother me, and I can get 3-4 hours of work done really for the amount of money I'm spending on food there. The other thing is I wanted to make sure that I allowed for enough money that when traveling through different regions, I can go check out some local cuisine. So this is also part of my experience. It's not something I do often, but if I'm not going to a restaurant to work, then I wait until it's going to be a special experience before dining out. I really try not to eat out just out of convenience. There are a couple of categories in my variable expenses where I really wish I could apply more money, but I just don't have it in the budget. One of those categories is activities. I allow for $80 a month, and that breaks down to about $20 a week, but because I am traveling slow, I can kind of try to combine it and just stay within that $80 a month and make sure that I'm just doing the activities that cost money in an intelligent and thoughtful way so that I can experience the things that mean the most to me while staying within budget. However, generally, hiking is free. Hygiene and beauty, I've only allowed for $15 a week, or it's $60 a month. Yeah, trust me, I'm scraping the bottom of the barrel to get by on these kinds of things. Just knowing what I like with skincare and all that kind of stuff, it is a little bit challenging, but it can be done. And if you're not somebody that's used to bougie products like me, you're going to have an easier time getting by in this category. The other one is spending, and I have allowed $15 a week in spending, which is again $60 a month, and spending on things like souvenirs or just anything that kind of um, catches my eye for fun things, but there's also things that come up that I kind of need to either replace, like if I need to buy a new charging cable for a device, or I always go through a lot of those suction phone mount things for when I'm driving. So things like that, you can pretend like you're not going to spend any money, but trust me, even the most disciplined and frugal-minded people are going to need to spend money. So allowing $80 or $60 a month for that is not too much, that's for sure. All right, the last category is another one of those variable expense categories where I really do wish I could spend more money. And honestly, sometimes I do, and sometimes this does blow the budget a little bit, but it's accommodations. I have attributed $64 for the month, which breaks down to just $16 per week. So how do I get by with that? Well, I mostly look for free camping or stealth camping. If you know, you know. So I am trying to make my home, which is my Subaru Forester, parked in some place, whether it's a beautiful location like this that's covered by my American Beautiful Pass, or a parking lot somewhere, or a rest area, or a gas station, or something like that where I can park up for free on BLM land, disperse camping, that kind of thing. That's the way I go. On occasion, I will book a campground, although I do feel like they're kind of a waste of money for me, and some of them can be really expensive. And when I say waste of money, it's because the footprint of my vehicle is so small and so self-contained in a way that I don't really feel like I need a campsite with any sort of picnic bench amenity or something that I'm paying for, when I really sometimes just don't understand what I'm paying for at a lot of campgrounds. More often, I am inclined to spend my accommodations funds towards hotel rooms. And getting a hotel room for $64 a month is not easy, but it can be done, especially if you're traveling through areas where it's shoulder or off season. It's also possible to go more than a month at a time and carry over some funds from a category and splurge for another spot. But yeah, I do wish I could budget more than $64 a month in accommodations, but it really can be done, especially if you use resources to help you find free dispersed camping. I'll link a video. If you've been paying really careful attention to how the numbers add up so far, well, you're a step ahead of me. But you may notice that there are still some funds left unaccounted for, and that's because of our last category, which is long-term expenses. Just because you put a pin in things back home, wherever that location was, doesn't mean that life stops. Home is now out on the road, and you still have to manage a lot of things like a lot of everyone else does. So you just kind of have to make adjustments for it, right? So some long-term expenses that you should keep in mind and budget for appropriately are, number one, taxes. However that rolls out for you to be done, taxes will come around for all of us. Also, vehicle maintenance. This is going to be a really important expense that will pop up occasionally and should be planned for monthly. I do try to put away 25% of my income for taxes and $100 a month for vehicle maintenance. Doesn't mean I spend the $100 every month, but it means that I collect it from my paycheck and tuck it away, because when it comes time for me to spend $600 on getting my rear brakes redone, yeah, that's 6 months of my vehicle maintenance fund. A few other categories that I find work really well for me to break things down into is a category I call provisions. That's when I need to replace something like, for example, protein powder, something that is going to last me for more than 1 month, but I want to budget for it on a monthly basis because I want to be pulling money each time I get paid and not throw a wrench in buying, expensive protein powders or just any sort of like long-term supply needs that I eventually will need to replace, but it won't fit into a budget in a week or a month. Also, same thing with clothing. I'm not out there buying clothing all the time, but eventually clothing replacements are going to be necessary, as well as gear. So gear replacements, they come up, they're necessary. You're going to need to put money aside on a regular basis, knowing that those expenses will come up unplanned, but not unpredicted. We know it's eventually going to happen. As I mentioned briefly before, I am now living on a variable income in a way that I never have before. So what's my approach to my monthly budget? I have recently decided that my new approach to my monthly budget is to take what I made in the previous month and use that as my budget for the current month. That means sometimes my budget may not be $1,500. Just depends on what I make on YouTube. If you're not familiar, the way YouTube pays someone is based on advertisements run on the video, channel memberships, if you have that available, which coming soon, and also anything like a thanks or a super like or anything related to that is how YouTube calculates what each person, each creator gets paid. Then after the month ends, we already have a number of what will be coming to us based on what we earned. Say, for example, in January, everything I earned for the month of January will be paid to me on February. It's about February 20th, 21st, something like that is where those funds come. So it's about 20 to 22 days after the income is earned where we actually receive payment of those funds. So I will be able to manage my budget based on what I'm making in that way so that I don't have to touch my savings, but I can stay out here on the road. Therefore, my variable expenses will only get me as far as the income I earn. Literally. Remember how I said the biggest expense for road lifers out here is gas and fuel? Well, that means I will slow down as slow as I need to go to make those numbers match. But we are still moving along. I hope you found this information insightful, and I hope you choose to come along for the journey. If you'd like to, please remember to subscribe. In the meantime, thank you so much for being here, and I'll catch you on the next one. Take care.